Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Sarah Quinn, and I work on the English content team at Hawkes. Hopefully, everyone can hear me okay. This afternoon, I'm going to be sharing about our question builder tool and how you can create and customize your own set of questions within the Hawkes courseware. A couple things I do want to mention before I get started. We have reserved a bit of time at the end for questions, so if you do have a question, feel free to enter it in the chat box and I will address it at the end. And I also want to mention, I know that some of you may currently be using Hawkes and be very experienced, and maybe you've used Question Builder before. Some of you may be new users and wanting to sort of learn a little bit more, and some of you might just be tuning in. This is your first experience with Hawkes, so you're not very familiar with the product itself. Either way, always welcome. I'm very grateful that you are joining me today, and hopefully you leave the webinar knowing a little bit more about our product and about the ways that you can sort of customize it to your tailored needs for your course. So as you can see here, I am in the instructor gradebook in the assignments tab, and I'm going to go ahead and jump into the question builder tab. And this is actually the same tool that we use internally to build all of the questions within the courseware, and it's also available for you to use. So it's the same tool. You can ask your training and support representative if you don't currently have access to it. They can just flip a switch on and give you access to it. And I also want to mention too, be very upfront, I am not a tech savvy person by any means. I'm a words person, I'm an English content person, but I do find that the system is very intuitive and very easy to use no matter your level of sort of tech savviness. So I am going to be creating two questions today. I'm going to do a multiple choice, and I'm going to do what we call a click to select question. I'm going to start off by creating a folder just for my testing questions here. When I click on the folder, I am going to go ahead and click create. And this is sort of the default template that pops up as a multiple choice. So I'll very quickly run through some of the options that we have up here at the top. You can embed images or tables. You can also add special characters in here. We've got a lot of styling options here. You can center or align your text and use bullets and numbering and things like that. I am going to be showing you a lot with this variable manager here. With the Hawkes questions, when we create the pre-created questions that are available in the default, each question in there has between 20 and 50 versions of the question itself. We call them iterations, so that students can be practicing with them and cycling through them and not be seeing the same question statement or answer choices twice, and really sort of get them familiar with responding to the question objective rather than memorizing any sort of patterns in answer choices or memorizing the correct responses. It's going to be slightly different every time while assessing the same objective. So for this first question, I'm going to go ahead and create a multiple choice question here. And for the sake of the webinar and to sort of save time, I do have it sketched out on a different screen, so forgive me if I'm looking over here. I want to be able to copy and paste this as opposed to typing it out, just for the sake of that being a little bit more time consuming. So I'm going to go ahead and start this question with the question statement, which is obviously the directions. So this is going to be a relatively low level question. We're asking the students to identify which word is a coordinating conjunction. And this is just another tip too, if you are a current user of Hawkes, when you see select the best answer and when your students see this in the question statement, that means that there's only one correct response. We do have checkbox questions that say select all that apply, and if students see select all that apply as opposed to select the best answer, they know that they're looking for at least two correct answers. But this is what we call a radio button, which means there's only one correct answer. And these answer fields, by default, it will populate 4 answer choices for you. You can add more than 4, or in our case today, I'm gonna go ahead and click this trash can to delete the 2 extra responses, because I want to, for simplicity's sake, just have 1 correct answer and 1 incorrect answer choice. So I am going to click on this variable manager here, and I'm going to show you sort of how the variables work in order to create a question with different versions of the question. So I'm clicking on this variable manager and I'm going to type in variable because I'm entering them for the first time here. So the way that I like to do it, and I find that it's most simple, is you want to have everything in each column be consistent. So for our purposes today, I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste my answer choices in here to variable A and variable B. So the students have been asked to select the coordinating conjunction. As you can see here, I have 7 different iterations that are going to apply on a horizontal level here. So the first iteration of this question, the correct answer is going to be for, and the incorrect answer choice, or the distractor, if you will be while. Another version of the question will have and as the correct answer and if as the subordinating conjunction as an incorrect answer. So we know that this variable A is always going to be correct and this variable B is always going to be incorrect. When we build our questions, we try to be as strategic as possible with the answer choice, the incorrect answer choices, so that we can be very targeted in the feedback that we give students when they select the incorrect answer. So this column is all subordinating conjunctions, which is incorrect because we've asked them to select coordinating. And this, because they are all subordinating, is going to make it a lot easier for us to create specific explain error messages. So I'm going to go ahead and click save. Oh, I got to get rid of this C because this column is not being used, at least right now. So I have my correct answer, incorrect answer. I'm going to go ahead and click save. Now I'm going to come down to my correct answer response box. And because we have different versions, I'm not just going to type out the correct answer in here. I'm actually going to use that variable so that it populates differently every time. So I'll come back in, I'll select A, and I'm going to go ahead and click insert. And this becomes a clickable button that you can actually copy and paste the variables to move them around if you need to. But essentially, this is like the data set that will always populate as the correct answer, no matter which version of the question a student is taking at the time. For my incorrect answer, I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to choose variable B here, and I'm going to click insert. And here is essentially the bare bones of the question. So you've got your statement and your correct answer and your incorrect answer. But our questions, at least within the practice mode, have tutoring components that are available to students. So I'm going to click on this show explain error, and this is where I'm going to type the message that the students will see if they do click on this incorrect answer. So it's going to be a specific response that we give them in order to help them sort of understand why it's wrong and what they can do in order to look for the correct answer. So as I mentioned before, I'm walking you through the way that we do these questions internally, but you can essentially create these however you like. By standard, in all of these tutoring components, we like to restate the question. So we're going to remind the students exactly what they were asked to do. We're going to explain in very simple terms, your answer is wrong, but then we're also going to take a step further and let them know why. So we know that all of the answers within this variable B are subordinating conjunctions. So we're going to remind them what they chose, a brief reminder of what it is and why it's wrong, and instead what they should look for. So this is the response that they'll see when they click that incorrect answer. And right now I'm going to go ahead and save the question. And when you save it for the first time, it's going to ask you to name it. I am going to go ahead and name it lesson 4.6, just because I know off the top of my head that that is our clauses and conjunctions lesson. And then I'm going to name it question 1. And because there's only 2 answer choices and it's multiple choice, I'm going to go ahead and click low difficulty, and then I'm going to save. And now I'm going to add some tutoring components. So I'm going to go ahead and add a hint, which you're going to click on tutoring components and add hint. And similar to the explain error, we're going to restate the question and give them some helpful clues in order to be able to reach that correct answer. So we've restated the question again, reminding them what they were asked to do. And then we pull into these hints any helpful definitions or helpful clues or terminology, refreshers of what a concept means in order to really get them to that place where they understand it enough to revisit the question, see a different version of the question, and still get it right because they're understanding the concept. So In this specific hint, I went ahead and instead of listing out what the acronym FANBOY stands for and just giving them all 7 coordinating conjunctions, I've actually added an example sentence for each one so that they can see exactly how each coordinating conjunction functions within a sentence. And this is where the styling components can be quite useful. You can go in and bold these words so that students can sort of be attracted to them immediately. Their eye is drawn to them immediately. So it kind of takes it a step further. Instead of just listing these words, they can see exactly how they function and why. So I'll go ahead and save this. And it's pretty helpful just to save it at each point that you hit, just so that you don't lose anything, just in case of any connection issues or anything like that. And then I'm going to add this solution here, which is the last component, which again is another thing that students will see when they get the question wrong, either for the final time or they've reached the limit that you've given them in terms of tries, or they can just look at the solution to see why the answer is correct. We like to explain why the answer is correct. So this is another area where the variables are going to come into play. We want to be able to list the correct answer as it applies to that version of the question, whatever it is they're working on. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight this, and I'm going to insert that variable again here so that it populates down here. And then I also want to actually go back in and add another variable within our variable manager, and I'm going to give them another example sentence specifically as it applies to whichever version of this question they're on. So I've typed out in the following sentence, which this coordinating conjunction is used to join 2 independent clauses. I want to have this changing variable here. So I've actually pre-written out example sentences for each of the 7 coordinating conjunctions. I'm going to go ahead and add a column here, add a variable C, and paste these in. So as you can see, the statements are quite similar, but each one highlights the correct answer in its own way and sort of showcases it in that way. So I'll save this, and then I will add it down here. And it might look like a lot of gibberish as it stands right now, and I totally understand. That was my reaction the first time I saw this. But I'm going to save the question, and I'm going to click preview, and this is going to help us see exactly what the students are going to be seeing. So after you choose to build in a question like this, you can preview it immediately afterwards just to make sure that everything is functioning properly. So we have our question statement, and we have our correct answer here. It'll tell you credit 100%, this is the correct answer. And then we can also click on this, which this is the message that'll populate when a student selects the incorrect answer. So you'll see exactly what they see here. You can make sure that, especially if you have more than one incorrect answer choice, you can make sure that the messages are populating as you intended them to. You can see this hint here and just make sure it all looks good on the student end when it's outside of Question Builder as they'll see it. And then you can also click on this solution here and see that the individual answer for this version of the question is going to populate appropriately, as well as the example. With a question like this that has several iterations, when you click on new values, it'll cycle through the iterations so that you can make sure that everything looks good from one version to the next. So that was sort of a very brief overview of the multiple choice approach and the variable approach. But I also wanted to showcase another question type for you, which we call our click to select questions. So for click to select questions, we ask students to either read a passage or often a sentence and then interact with the sentence itself. So either select a word, a phrase, or an actual sentence as their correct or incorrect answer choice. So I'm going to start this question by copying and pasting, and just for the sake of time, I'm not going to use variables in this. This will just be one stagnant passage with the correct answer that repeats, just because I don't want to overwhelm. But I'm asking students here to read the following passage, and I have this 3-sentence passage, and I'm asking them to identify the compound sentence here. Just as an overview of this before I delve into how to create this, the first sentence I have is a simple sentence, so we want this to be an incorrect answer choice. The second sentence is the compound sentence, so this is going to be our correct answer choice. And then the third sentence is a complex sentence, so this is also incorrect, but for a different reason than the first sentence. So I'm going to move down here and I'm going to switch this from multiple choice to click to select. And then this is going to give me the field where I'm entering my answer choices. So because students are literally going to be clicking on the sentences as their answer choices, I'm going to copy this and paste it down here. And I'm going to make these individual sentence options. As you can see right now, this is hopefully the most tech-involved part of this webinar. But as you can see right now, the default is separate by comma. But for English, of course, with a passage especially, we use commas all the time. So we want to use a symbol to separate these into answer choices that we're not going to use often, which for us, we typically default to the pound sign or the hashtag sign. So as you can see, the question builder tool thinks that this is one answer altogether because it's all one set of text. So we need to break this up into 3 different choices. So I'm going to go ahead and separate them and add hashtags at the beginning of each sentence. And you can see that this is going to break it up into 3 separate choices, which is what we want. Now that we have these 3 answer choices, we're going to go ahead and click on the correct answer and it's going to populate as correct. So in the same way that the multiple choice question did, this full sentence is going to populate as the correct answer. And again, we can add explain errors for each of these. I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste the explain error message. And because sentence 1 is the simple sentence, they're going to see a different explain error message for this than they will see for the complex sentence. So again, we restate the question, we let them know it's wrong, and then we let them know why. So the sentence you chose is a simple sentence because this is what it contains. Instead, here's what to look for. And so we're going to add a similar but specific and more targeted explain error message for this one. Let them know that their answer choice is a complex. That's why it's wrong. Instead, here's what to look for. So again, I'm going to save it, and I'm going to name this as question 2. I'm going to choose medium difficulty because it is a bit more involved, reading a passage, selecting a full sentence. And I am also going to go ahead and quickly add the hint here. Again, bringing in some contextualized examples and giving them example sentences to sort of go off of instead of just simple definitions. We like to make sure that we're sort of contextualizing things as we go. So here's the hint. For example sentences, I do sometimes like to indent, but again, you can format these questions however you see fit. I'm going to go ahead and save it here and then add the solution. And because we aren't using any variables in this and the text is unchanging from response to response, we're not going to need to add any variables into the solution either. This is the correct answer no matter what because there's only one version of the question. And then again, a little bit of an explanation down here as to why this is the correct answer. So I'm going to save it and I'm going to preview, but unlike the last question, because we don't have iterations, we're not going to be able to cycle through and look at the new values because this is all the same, but we still do recommend, and of course we will go in and preview the question immediately afterwards just to test and make sure that everything is okay. So this is the correct answer. When you select it, it should turn green, so that's all good. When you select this incorrect answer, you should be able to see the appropriate explain error message, and again, this one should also populate appropriately. So it looks like we're all good here. And I wanted to also, before I open it up for questions, I do want to show you exactly how you can use these questions within your various different assignments. So I'm going to show you how to incorporate them first in your curriculum, and then I'm going to show you how to incorporate it into a web test too. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my curriculum, and I'm going to scroll down to lesson 4.6. because this is our lesson that focuses on clauses and conjunctions. So I can click on this lesson, and what it's going to bring up is a 2-panel screen. So on the left side here, you can see all of the pre-created questions that are available for your use. So if you'd like to customize your question bank and have it look exactly as you want, if you want to have all low-level questions or all of a certain objective, you can choose from these question banks and assign whichever questions you like. As you can see, we have 28 questions available in this lesson. Currently, this instructor has only assigned 15. but I want to be able to pull in the questions that I just built myself. So I'm going to click on this drop down and I'm going to select instructor as opposed to the Hawkes default question bank. And it should populate, when I click on the folder that I created these in, it should populate all of the questions that you have in this folder. So as you can see, it's going to have these 2 that I just created. I only want to assign the first one to this lesson 4.6. So I want students to be able to have this question in there when they go to complete their homework for lesson 4.6. So I'm going to check the box. I'm going to do add selected. And you can see now that it's 16 questions as opposed to 15. And if I'm not mistaken, yep, it should populate down at the very bottom so you can sort of see exactly what you've added. Anytime you make changes in here, you're definitely going to want to click save, and that will automatically update. So that's a pretty simple way to incorporate your own questions into the lessons. Again, your TSR, your training and support representative, can give you a ton of information on how to customize these even further, how to hide certain questions or filter by objective. But the last thing I'm going to show you quickly is how to incorporate the question into a web test, which is an instructor curated test. You can use it as like a completion grade or a homework grade. You can pull questions across different lessons if you'd like to do one after every chapter. So I am going to create a new web test here, and I'm going to enter into my curriculum. And again, I'm going to add my instructor question first. So I'm going to click on my instructor question, and both of those questions that I just created should populate. Because I already added this one into the curriculum, I'm going to go ahead and choose this click to select. I'm going to go ahead and add selected, and then I'm going to go back to this drop down and I'm going to click on the default. Let's say I want to build an entire web test that is all focused on lesson 4.6, clauses and conjunctions. I can click on this lesson, and this is going to be the same panel that we saw before with all of the available questions. So again, you can go through these, decide which ones you like. If you want to do all multiple choice, if you want to do all one objective or difficulty level, you can click the ones you want, and then you're going to click add selected, and you should see 6 populate. So 5 of these are the Hawkes default questions, and then we also have our question that we just created. And again, for this, you're going to click save, and if it's a new web test, you can name it whatever you wish. I'm just going to name it test for demo purposes, and click OK. And then when we go back to refresh this page and click on the web test again, this should populate under here, and you can click on this. I'm going to move myself out of the way here. You can click on your test that you just created, and you can click assign. So let's say you teach a section of ENG 101 and a section of ENG 102. If you only want to assign this web test to 101, you can select that box. Any other sections that you are in charge of would populate down here, and you can sort of pick and choose and really essentially customize it however you see fit. So that is actually it. That's all I wanted to get through today, showing you a couple different types of questions, ways to add variables, and then ways to incorporate them. And it looks like we're doing pretty well on time. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the chat, and I would love for anyone, if they have questions, to type them in here. I can give you a few minutes. If nobody has questions, I will let you know that we often get the question of whether or not you can do other question types. So if you don't want to create a multiple choice, and if you don't want to do click to select, we also have click to insert questions where you can have students insert commas or punctuation marks or whatever have you into various different areas of a sentence or a passage. That's often very helpful for like the research styles section. Let's see here. That's helpful for the research style section and the punctuation sections. And you can also do open-ended questions if you'd like students to have maybe an analysis where you ask them to react to something. Just an FYI, was the sample use of and, Maxine, and Roberto a coordinating conjunction? Yes, it was. It should have been. Thank you so much. I appreciate your question. Yes, it should have been a coordinating conjunction. I don't know if I bolded it or not. I appreciate that. Thank you. If nobody has any other questions, I know some people might be watching this as a recording. We will be sending out this presentation as an email, so you can go back through and kind of track it. I know I kind of rushed through the question builder process, but if you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out to us as a content team. You can reach out to english@hawkslearning.com, and that will go directly to myself and my team. We can get back to you, and as always, our training and support team is wonderful with setting up your gradebook, giving you tips and tricks for how to do it yourself and totally customize it to where it's going to benefit you and your students in the best way possible. So I so appreciate everyone joining today. If nobody has any more questions, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Thank you so much. We will be emailing this to you, and I appreciate everyone tuning in. Thank you.